On the standing ducky, the UV map is not the initial UV map that was created when I made the model. That one was a lot messier than this. I made this particular UV map by selecting the ducky in Object Selection mode, and then in my UV editor using the UV Toolkit's Create section to run automatic mapping. That gives me just about this map. When we go through our own character modeling process, you'll find that the default shapes each have their own UVs, and that as you start putting them together and creating models, those default UVs get really tangled, and it can be nice to start with an automatic map. The automatic map has some basic flaws. One is that there are spaces like this where I've got a UV shell that is also a single face. Yup, that face. It's a shell, all by itself. It's got some crazy border edges like this little cutout here, that little weird thing that looks like a triangle. Ooh, does my model have triangles? Ooh, bad modeler. So, in general, it's not great. The border edge arrangement is not great. The advantage that it has is that if I turn on my checkerboard, there isn't a lot of distortion. Almost all of the checkers are relatively the same size. Sure, some of them are facing in crazy directions, but they're all pretty even. So there are good things about the automatic map, but for the most part, it's a transitional map that I use when I start creating my own. Now, the thing that I don't like about the automatic map is all of these really rough border edges. So to get rid of those, I'm just going to go into Edge Selection mode and make a massive selection all the way around the ducky. Back over in the UV Toolkit, there is a section that will let me cut and sew edges together. There's this cut, that's going to cut edges. There's a sew, that's going to sew edges. There's also this command called Stitch Together. Stitch Together will take disparate UV shells, bring them together, and then sew them. And in this case, that's what I'm going to do, and it's going to look really terrible. Yes, it looks like this. It's actually got 2 feet, which is kind of interesting, but it's outside of 0 to 1, it's really lumpy, and there are a lot of places where there is distortion and overlap. Look at those checkers. That is terrible. Now, the reason that it's doing so many bad things is that there are no border edges at all. So what I can do is I can go to Edge mode, and I like to start by just cutting my object in half. So if I double click the edge loop around the middle of the ducky, what I find is that I've got a single edge loop that goes all the way around. If I run the cut command, that should give me 2 UV shells, this one and this one. This one, this one. Now that I've got 2 of them, there's 1 border edge, and that means that I can start attempting to alleviate some of the distortion in the UVs. To alleviate that distortion, I will use a command in the Unfold section. The command is Unfold, and before you run it, you must have UV shells selected. So I am in UV shell selection mode. I've got both of them selected. I will run Unfold. Sometimes this takes a little bit. This time it went pretty quickly, and now I've got, strangely, 1 shell that looks like a ducky and 1 that looks like a big circle. The big circle has an awful lot of distortion in it. The regular ducky has slightly less distortion. If I turn on my checkerboard, this half is the circle half, and you can see that it is just getting kind of wacky in places. It's really big here, really small there, and believe it or not, this whole foot is 1 black square that goes all the way up the leg. The other side honestly is not that much better. It looks better through the body, but then when I get down to the foot, there's still a lot of distortion in the foot. This is one white square that goes all the way up the leg. So it's getting better, but it's not perfect yet. What I will do at this point is I will say there's still a lot of distortion here. So to alleviate that distortion, what I need to do is I need to continue to cut border edges. So I will go back into edge mode, and I'm going to take one of these edges along the inside of the leg and double click it. We'll just see where it goes. And I am also going to turn off the walls and the floor and maybe the cloth too. And now I can see a little bit better around this model. So it looks like that edge comes up the leg all the way. That's probably a little bit too far for me. I'd prefer an edge that doesn't go back up. Let's see what this one does. Okay, this one comes down into the foot and stops. That looks lovely. Oh, but it goes all the way up into the rear end. So what I think I'll do is a little selection trick. I'm going to click on this edge right here, and then shift double click on another edge down along the same edge loop, and that will select all of the edges in between. So I will go all the way down the leg that way. And then when I get down to about here, that takes me to halfway down the foot. I'll double click this as well. I will repeat that process on the other side and up to there. I also want to make sure that these two edges that I'm going to cut meet in the middle. So I'll take them both up to the center, and now I can hit the cut button again. Then I will go back into UV shell mode and unfold one more time. Now I've got two duckies, and they've each got a giant foot. That's awesome. If I turn on the distortion meter, this little black and white checker, you'll see that finally, I have got checkers all the way around my ducky. Hooray! At this point, I can go back to UV shell mode. I can grab both of these shells, and back over in the UV toolkit, the last thing I can do is I can run a command under Arrange and Layout. It's called Layout, and it will move both of my shells back into the 0 to 1 space. It will also scale them evenly so the checkers on both sides are the same size. And once I've established that I'm back in 0 to 1, I can start doing sort of the same thing I did with the previous UV map, and moving and scaling and rotating until my shells have a little bit of space around them and I think that they're going to be paintable. Now, the UV map that I've made here is perfectly functional. It really is. It's got minimal distortion. I can tell which part of the ducky is what. The border edges maybe aren't in great places, but maybe they are. So if you've gotten this far, you have successfully created a UV map. Congratulations! I will pause here, and in the next video I'm going to talk about some options that we have with this map. So hang in there, and I will be right back.